arms towards the sun. You feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive and you don't have to be afraid.
Welcome to the Bassline. Jeremiah Abiah is an extraordinary vocalist and vocal instructor based here in New York City. He is here today to share some of his unique experience during the COVID event. He is also here to help us venture into a new subject for the Bassline altogether, the attack on fatherhood. It is my great privilege to welcome to the Bassline the phenomenal Jeremiah Abiah. Welcome to the Bassline, Jeremiah. How are you today, my brother?
Well, Jeremiah, nice to be here. So honored to be here.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to our discussion, although it's going to be a difficult discussion for sure. A lot of just hardship you've endured and a whole very difficult thing that we have to discuss here today, but it's very important. So before we get into this critical discussion, I want to make a few announcements. First of all, this is a pre-recorded episode. I'm going to be out of town this Friday. I'm going to be in France. I'm reuniting with my family. They've been gone for most of the summer. I've been here doing gigs and teaching chess lessons, but I'm hopping on a plane and then I'm hopping on a train, and I'll be very excited to see my family later this week. And the following week will also be a pre-recorded episode, and then I'll be back in studio in the beginning of September. But in the meantime, we have great guests lined up. And also, I want to tell everyone that our next 5 to 8 frequency jam is going to be on September 28th. That's a Sunday, September 28th, 3:30 p.m. at Rock Mill Fitness. That's a great venue I want you guys to know about. There's a great fitness program that happens every day at Rock Mill, and the address there is 274 Lenox Avenue. That's just south of 125th Street. So please save that date. Please invite some friends. We're really building up a great new scene there, and we're exploring the powers of the 528 frequency, which I've become a total believer in the power of this realigning of our musical instruments with the spectrum of life, if you will. What else? JeremiahHosea.com. Please go to my website and buy the theme song of this show for $1, or check out the other original songs and albums I produced there. There's some good stuff. I've employed a lot of outstanding musicians, so it has that live feel to it. It's not music that was made by computers. And also remotelearningchess.com. I'm a chess instructor. Please schedule your lesson today. I will teach you from scratch, or if you're an experienced player, I will provide you with incredible up-to-date information right out of the New in Chess yearbook and other great resources. And also, of course, please subscribe to me on Substack. I've published 31 articles to date, mostly medical freedom focused, a couple of political articles, but always we at least touch on the medical freedom conversation. And in general, that's the focus of the Substack. So if you haven't subscribed to that already, please subscribe right away. If you can be a paid subscriber, that's greatly appreciated. That helps the wagon wheel roll. But if you can't be a paid subscriber, go ahead and be a free subscriber right away. And when you win the lotto, then you can become a paid subscriber. But in the meantime, let's get right into this discussion with my distinguished guest, my friend Jeremiah Abiah. He's a neighbor of mine. He's a Harlem resident as well. He's a phenomenal vocalist, as I mentioned, also renowned vocal instructor. And he's had to deal with an incredible ordeal pertaining to the custody of his son and other circumstances that he's going to explain to us. But first, we want to discuss, since this is a medical freedom focused show, and that is a running theme, I also want to mention that Jeremiah was on the right side of history. Very few artists in this city that I've noticed can say that. But Jeremiah knew that something was really wrong with this coercive vaccine agenda. We talked about it a bit when I'd see him in the neighborhood. We talked about it online a little bit in direct messages. But I would love to hear from you, Jeremiah. Just give us some insight in terms of your personal experience First of all, with the lockdowns and then the vaccine mandates. How did you experience all of that?
So it was a very interesting scenario. I was locked in, as most of us were, with a lot of times our significant others. I found it to be quite challenging because when you're in these predicaments, you're forced to face a lot of the things that you kind of escape because schedules allow you to kind of have space. When you're breathing the same air as another person, you have to deal with their stuff, and you have to deal with your own stuff. As an individual, it's very easy for me to kind of be alone, right? I can be home and be myself all the time, but when you have to deal with other people's proclivities, it can be a little bit more challenging. So I found that the initial lockdown was quite challenging because I found that I had a partner at the time who was hyper sensitive to what was going on. Obviously, we were all kind of feeling a bit of fear from the media, from what you're hearing outside. I don't know if you remember this, but at a certain time every day in New York, or at least in our neighborhood, people would start banging pans and that kind of thing outside the window. It created this like hysteria inside of you. There was also the fireworks that were going off nonstop at nighttime. So that was a bit challenging for me initially. And just, coming up with this new protocol, because you feel like you're trapped, you are in a situation where you don't know if something's going to happen to you. I particularly, I felt okay personally, but I had to also deal with my partner, my wife at the time, her challenges with the scenario. So that was my initial experience with the lockdown. The vaccine mandates came, I feel, later. They weren't kind of the initial thing that happened.
Sure.
We were blessed in a sense that in August of 2020. So actually, let me back up. We decided, okay, we're stuck in the house, let's have a baby. So at first we went from like fighting like cats and dogs to like, okay, this is the time. There's a pause in life. Let's, start a family. We've been married almost 10 years at that time, and we're both aging in a particular way. And I think obviously it's more sensitive for women in that point. So we started the process. We ended up having to go through a fertility process. And so we started going to clinics, to a particular fertility clinic to start our process. And then we started looking for a home because we realized we're trapped in this house, and, we really want to be in a backyard somewhere at least, right? And we had accumulated a certain amount of money at that point. So we thought, okay, we'll go and get a house. So we got we looked at houses all summer, et cetera, Anyways, then my ex-wife landed a TV show, and so we moved to Vancouver. So when we moved to Vancouver, Canada was really strict on the policies. So we were in a hotel for 2 weeks. We weren't allowed to leave the hotel. If we left, we were being fined $1 million. That was the policy in Canada, Vancouver, British Columbia. And so after that, my wife started working. We started doing the fertility process there. We got pregnant within like a very short amount of time. And then my mother actually got very sick. My mother got COVID. Now, what I noticed is that in September, a dear friend of mine just dropped dead. And then I started getting another call. Another friend dropped dead. Healthy black men, by the way. This started happening, and I started paying attention. I come from a medical family, so I have a father who's a doctor and 2 brothers who are doctors. And my father initially, kind of said, it's nothing to worry about, blah, blah, blah. Then when the vaccines started coming out, there was this pressure to get vaccines. I'm not an anti-vax person, but I think that one has to have autonomy over their bodies. And so I was really being very mindful of the conversations. Some of the conversations people will call conspiracy, but I don't really believe in conspiracy. I just believe in delayed realities. Because you find that conspiracies end up being, many of them to be true. And so I started like paying attention, like, oh, my friend Justin died, and then another friend died, and then I started seeing football players passing out on fields, and in particular, my view was it happened to be black men of a certain age, like a young men. Um, I had COVID as well, the initial COVID, and at the time we didn't know what it was, but when I look back, I'm like, oh, I had this thing actually in the fall of 2019, like in December 2019. I had this
Mm,
episode where I thought I was having a heart attack,
mm,
and I had lost sense of taste and smell, and I rushed myself to the hospital because I didn't know what was going on. They couldn't find anything, and then I noticed from that point on I had this ache in my heart, this ache that would not go away, and I actually it still exists to this day. And so I went from being like this person who worked out all the time and doing lots of cardio to almost not working out for almost 5 years now because I didn't know what would happen to me.
man.
And I eventually went to my physician. I went to one of the top hospitals, and got all the stress tests and all of the x-rays that one can get to test one's heart. While myocarditis was ruled out, I had symptoms of something that they couldn't figure out, and they have not been able to figure out. So something definitely happened to me. And then obviously I felt alarmed because I had, like I said, I started noticing not only people that were like literally friends of mine dying, I started seeing on the news people dying. One thing that I discovered during the pandemic as I watched this documentary that was put out by Israel, and it's no longer available online, but I saw the whole documentary, and they talked about these people who had taken this vaccine for the COVID jab, I should say, and they lost their abilities for many things, or women were miscarrying, or healthy people, X, Y, and Z were no longer healthy. So if I'm fast forwarding in my story, we were in Vancouver. Things were much safer there. The mask and stuff didn't really exist there because they had taken so many precautions for the situation. So, anyways, I come back to the U.S. in January 31st, 2021, and because we could not travel back and forth because of the situation. But nevertheless, my mother caught COVID. My mother was a healthy 70, something year old woman. We traveled together all the time. This woman was very active. She had pneumonia. She was in the hospital. No one could come and visit her, obviously, because of COVID stipulations. And my mother is no longer able to even walk,
Mm,
very far at all. This was a very healthy woman, but she was forced to get the COVID shots and jab. And so it has been really sad to watch her be in that situation. And my point of bringing up the Israeli documentary is that this was also very much documented in this film. These series of elderly women were interviewed, and it talked about their lives prior to getting this shot. And it really struck me. And then I saw it happen in my own life with my family. My sister developed cancer. There's no cancer in my family. My sister got breast cancer. My eldest brother got lesions on his brain. And again, I started experiencing more friends just literally dropping dead. I talked to my friend Keon on Friday. He was dead on Sunday. This was a very healthy young man who was actually a student of mine. So I lost like 3 students. People were just literally dropping dead. So I found it very alarming. So that was my experience, how, in a nutshell.
So, first of all, sorry for all that you've gone through. That's uh, quite a harrowing story you're telling us. And so you saw some people die apparently from COVID right before the rollout, and then you saw more people die after the rollout. Is that what you were just saying?
Yeah, basically. I mean, primarily it was after the rollout. I mean,
Right,
the rollout is when I started seeing or hearing or getting calls about my friends.
right. Yeah, there's so many forms of evidence that I point to. So many people are really in the dark still. They think, oh, these shots were rolled out that helped stop COVID. And anyone who says that people were harmed, they're just making it up. Vaccines are safe and effective. I'm amazed that people have been able to sequester themselves so well, but the evidence is overwhelming. And I point to several categories of evidence that are mentioned repeatedly on this show. First of all, everyone needs to read, if you haven't already, The Real CDC by Bassline two-time guest John Bodwin. Everyone go to therealcdc.com. That book is very important because he goes to record level data. He goes to the death certificates and looks at individual cases in a way that will instruct us beyond just sort of generic swaths of data from the official agencies, but also there are over 4,000 papers indicating the harms of the COVID shots of all different kinds, from injuring people's eyes, injuring people's hearing, acute organ failure, autoimmune disorders of all different kinds,
Yep,
cancers, what's now termed turbo
that's
cancer.
right.
It goes on and on. I mean, I always reference the statement by Dr. Ryan Cole because I think it's so well put when he said these shots are the Swiss Army knife of injury and death. And then I have examples from my own personal life. Like I said, if I look at every sort of circle in which I reside, I see the musicians who have died suddenly, or
Hmm.
musicians who have heart injuries now, who have cancers. I see people in my family, unvaccinated, doing great, vaccinated individuals with new medical problems, sometimes very serious medical problems. I see in my own building. I remember as soon as the shots were rolled out, people were reluctant, but they were being pressured until they couldn't return to work. One of my neighbors told me, well, her cousin got her shot and promptly had a heart attack within
Hmm.
days. So all these little, what they call anecdotal stories around me just clearly indicated something is not right. And unfortunately, that has not subsided. So I just wonder, what have you seen before we get into the details of what we're going to focus on today? What have you seen broadly in terms of vaccine injury? Like, aside from your sort of immediate experience, how have you perceived the whole event after the rollout?
Well, I am someone who does a lot of research. I look at mainstream things, and I also look at, the non-mainstream media attention and conversation around this. And there is no doubt that, something is not right. And, the problem is that people, out of fear, took this vaccine. They took it out of, trying to maintain their lifestyles. And the thing is, like, even with all the proof, there's a reluctance to get people their jobs back, et cetera, et cetera. But I've seen it, just in so many ways. I'm paying attention to how people's lives have been affected, people's health. I have noticed that, I have a friend who's a scientist. I come from I have a really wide relationship based. People come from, high degree situations. And I have a scientist friend who told me that this product never passed trials. He told me that the mice that took this shot did not survive past 2 months, which is the equivalent to 2 years in a human's life. And if you look at the data, he said, you will see in 2 years, people will just start dying. And that is exactly what we've experienced. That's exactly what we've seen. And 2 years time from the time people took that thing, sometimes it's instantaneously, but if you look at it in the long term, people have been dying within 2 years of having it. And so it hasn't passed me lightly. I'm really paying attention from all aspects of life, both personally and non-personal.
I also want to ask you, since I do have the special opportunity in talking to you to talk to a fellow musician, a fellow New York City based artist, um, if you could just add some comments in terms of, were you surprised at the lack of questioning by our peers? Because I personally was. I mean, I thought, we're anti-establishment people to a large extent as artists. We're questioning people, but it's as though people just stopped questioning altogether, and they were resentful of the people who were questioning. How do you describe your experience in terms of the art community and some of that?
So I watched the conversations a lot online. I also was surprised at the amount of people who just kind of went like sheep into the situation. And but I have a lot of empathy, and I see people were afraid, they were scared, and this we hadn't experienced anything quite like that in our time. So in that regard, I understood what could have happened for some people, right? People wanted to get back to work. It's like, I got to be on the road because da da da, right? Because a lot of people don't have the option, to sit home and not work, right? And fight the power that be. So I understood it from their perspective, but I was finding it surprising that people weren't sounding the alarm sooner, with no real evidence, of results that it was going to help people, but actually just the opposite. But people weren't paying attention. It's like, wait a minute, you don't see these things happening in the media? Oh, the quarterback fell down, or the running back, or whoever, a lot of that stuff was happening. Or, you see someone like LeBron James who was like, oh, you better take it. And then his son passes, was about to die on the court. Or, what was that? Was it Hank Aaron? One of these
Yeah, Hank Aaron
Hank
was
Aaron going
brought
around to
out.
the barbershops. He takes it, he dies.
Yeah.
Cicely Tyson. She, healthy woman in her 90s, healthy. She gets the shot. She dies 2 days later.
Yeah.
This stuff was happening, man. I'm like, people are really blind. And I thought, wow, this is very scary.
Seriously, and it's so frustrating for me to see people within our community continue to commiserate around the losses of various people in our community, and then pretend as though they don't see that there's a pattern here. Oh, how did we lose another one? What's going on here? Yeah, I'll tell you what's going on here. It's called the killer vaccine, hashtag the Depop jab, hashtag the suicide shot.
Yeah.
But now I would like to venture into this next phase of the discussion, which is a new topic for the baseline, but I think it's very relevant because when you talk about the biosecurity state, as I refer to it, the medical tyranny that was imposed on us, I view that as an attack against the family to a large extent. I feel that when you undermine our autonomy and you undermine our ability to make decisions for ourselves, for our families, that it should be perceived as an assault against us. I don't think that it's well intentioned, but it's also part of a broader assault on our communities. And when you talk about an assault against the community, we have to look specifically at the assault against the family. And there's a lot being done to undermine families. And it's a huge conversation when we spread it all out in terms of all the different features of that, the different aspects of that. But you've had a very difficult situation that I'd like you to describe for us in terms of what's going on in terms of your custody battle, and give us the background of that before we even talk about specifically some of the stuff that's going on in the courts.
Sure. So I, found myself, for lack of the better words, hoodwinked. I was with a woman for, over 10 years, waiting, obviously, to have a children, because it's very important to me. One of the most important conversations I had when I decided to get married, and I thought I waited and found the right person. And after going through a fertility process to have a child, and what's really interesting, Jeremiah, is that when we were having discussions with the fertility doctor, this man was really intuitive, and he said, I go about, and I have this, and I actually recorded the conversation. And he says to us, is your marriage secure? Because if it's not, I won't help you have a child, because it's going to take two parents to raise a child. He goes through this beautiful conversation, and she says, yes, it's secure. I need to keep working on some things. This is literally the thing it says on the recording, she says to the doctor. And so when we come back from Vancouver in January 31st, 2021, within 2 weeks, I had gone to visit my mother, like as I told you, she almost died from COVID, literally. She moves out, my ex, at 5 months pregnant, moves out and goes into hiding. And and hides, and then moves to Texas. And obviously I don't get to experience the things that a waiting father, an expected father would experience, right? So I don't get to experience my child in the womb and all those things. This woman goes into hiding and starts telling people that she's being abused. And it was so surprising, the amount of called flying monkeys that started to come around this story. The pastors of my church turned their backs on me. I was getting text messages that were literally had my jaw on the floor. Anybody who knows me, I have a certain, I'm a man of integrity, and I have never hurt a fly. And a matter of fact, one of the parts of my career is I pour into people. That is what I do, right? And so how much more my wife, who I helped, solidify an incredible career, and all the provided for her until she made $1 million, right? And then I realized, oh, she didn't need me anymore. So this is what sparked this. And so I found myself being served divorce papers in April of 21. Still not knowing where my wife and my son are, or my child. I knew I was having a son at that point, yes. And then going to Texas, where she moved the day of my son's birth, and then going to the hospital, and the hospital is on red alert. So they have like security thing that I'm going to do something to this woman. This is the kind of narrative she's created. And my sister told me, they have to do that, but they'll see when you get there how who you are, and this won't be the case the next day. She was right. The next day I go to the hospital, but the first day I couldn't be alone in the hospital room with her. My mother, who's elderly, I told you could barely walk. She, is having to be watched to watch our, this newborn child. And on the third day, I wasn't allowed to see my child. I was called by my ex's family, who was hiding the child, because I didn't even know where they were living in Texas. I wasn't allowed to know. And I found myself in this really, really terrible situation, literally crying. And so I get a call from the charge nurse at the hospital, and she says, well, I can't let you into the area where your wife is, because she's asked for you not to be there, but you are the father and you're married. So you can come up and look, your child will be in the nursery. You can look at him in the nursery window. So my child's the only child in the nursery. And I'm sitting in a chair looking through a window, and I'm weeping. The charge nurse comes out. She starts rubbing my back, and she's like, I know this is very difficult, because she knew something was wrong. So she said, if you're ready to leave, let me know, and I'll bring you in, and I'll just let you hold the baby for a bit, and you can kiss him, and I'll take a picture. And I did just that. Man, I posted the picture of my son with his face covered. I never showed my son's face on social media, because I want to protect his privacy in that way. But obviously, I'm proud, I'm happy I have this beautiful child despite the circumstances. This became a very big issue in court. The judge, which we'll talk about eventually, but this judge just was unbearable. So I come back to New York, And I don't see my son again until Thanksgiving Day. So my son is 5 months old out of the womb, and I don't know where he's living. We go to court now. I have to secure an attorney. I'm a working musician. I don't have tons of money. And so I had no money at that point, right? Because I hadn't really been working since the pandemic. So, yeah, so my son was hidden from me. Now we're going to court on Zoom. The judge has made it clear he thought that it was important that I, spend time with the child. My ex refused to divulge where she was. The judge said she had to move back to New York. And I have a family member who's a judge. He told me to start studying the law and don't waste money on lawyers because they're there to steal your money. So I start studying the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, et cetera, et cetera. I realized, okay, there's a major constitutional violation of my rights happening here. And so I eventually have to drop the attorney because I don't have money. And now we get into this brawl in court where, my ex has at this point, because she got to a point where she made a ton of money, she's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers, and I'm defending myself in court. One of the stipulations that the judge made was that I was not able to see my son if I didn't get the COVID vaccine. And so this became a point of contention. I obviously had, I had some other health things that I was very concerned about, and I wasn't being told by my doctor to get the vaccine. So eventually we start going to see a pediatrician. The pediatrician is, trying to give my newborn child the COVID vaccine. And I put her on notice on paper and in person that if she gave that to my child, she would have a millions of dollars lawsuit against her. I would sue her, and I would sue my ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife. And so then I became looked at as a problem in court, because now I'm saying, well, there's a schedule, but he doesn't have to be on the schedule that you're giving him. I feel as a parent that I should be making decisions that I feel are the best for my child. I'm not anti-vax, but I feel like, okay, let's give him one shot at a time. Why are we giving my child 3 and 6 shots at a time? And obviously I run across, a couple of doctors. I believe Dr. Christine Parks, I believe her name is, who was talking about how Black boys in particular, before the age of 3 are more likely to get autism because of the MMR. So, things like this, I started to become hypersensitive to. And I said, okay, well, he can get it, but we're going to wait. He doesn't have to get it before 3 years old. And I want him to get it in pieces. I don't think he has to get it all at one time. So the doctor said, there's no problem. She'll do it that way. She doesn't normally do it that way. I was like, well, that's the way I want it to be done, because I think this is best for my Black child. So that was something that I was questioned about in court. And basically, as I started to study the Constitution, I started to file documents that became very informed. And so I started to file papers in a particular kind of way, making sure that the judge understood that I have a sovereignty, that I'm not a sovereign citizen, but that I have a status as an American, and that, the jurisdiction has to be proven. I'm not giving jurisdiction to anyone, and that my body is mine. My son is my biological property, and I should be able to make decisions on behalf of my child.
Wow. Yeah, I'll tell you personally, I was not an anti-vaxxer when I started hosting this show just barely over 2 years ago. And I made that perfectly clear. My children had received some vaccines, which I now regret, honestly. And I have gone from being someone who openly stated I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I'm just opposed to these particular COVID injections, the way they were rushed to market. I don't trust the mRNA concept, doesn't sound good to me on paper. I don't want my rights being violated, etc. I graduated from that to saying, you know what? I'm an anti-vaxxer. And I wrote an article that I hope people could go and check out. And if you know someone who deserves the credit, please send them my article. Hats off to the old school anti-vaxxers. They were way ahead of the game. Yeah. But now, fast forward, I'm past being an anti-vaxxer. Like my friend and guest, Dr. Leonard Horowitz, declares, I'm a vaccine abolitionist at this point. I encourage people take a look at the anti-vax canon. There are some books that will really change your thinking about vaccines, including Turtles All the Way Down is one incredible book. Another is Dissolving Illusions. And there's actually many other books that indicate, you know what? There's an issue here with vaccines. They have made a lot of claims as to their helpfulness that actually can't really be substantiated, and they've done an incredible amount of effort in terms of, or produce a lot of effort in terms of covering up the harms that vaccines have inflicted to large numbers of people. And the main thing I point to, more than any particular document or scientific research paper or anything, is let's go to the firsthand accounts of these parents who are saying our children were injured, sometimes severely injured and crippled by vaccines. And, if that was one family, I think it should be taken seriously. But the fact that we have thousands and thousands of people who can testify to seeing their children just deteriorate right before their eyes, it's a crisis in this country. And, I don't know how it compares on a nation by nation basis. It seems like we're the most vaccinated country in the world in terms of how they're continually expanding the schedule, the quote unquote vaccine schedule for kids. But yeah, I wasn't an anti-vaxxer before, but now I'm a vaccine abolitionist. I've surpassed anti-vaxxer status even. But to focus now again specifically on your situation and what you've dealt with, I know that you have had a very, I don't know what the right word is, almost bizarre experience in dealing with this judge. You've done some additional research. Tell us about the sort of strange circumstances pertaining to the judge presiding over your case and some things that seem to be completely incongruous with the idea of having a fair legal proceeding.
Yeah, so a couple of things. My uncle told me do some research, do a FOIA request, the Freedom of Information Act request, about this judge, and find out if he has an oath of office on record, because that'll tell you a lot about the judge. So in the state of New York, there's a law called the New York Public Officers Law. And this law says that anyone who is serving in the public must have an oath of office on record, some with the clerk of the courts, some with the State Department. Someone who is so there's the other thing that happened, because my wife, I guess, has achieved a certain thing. We didn't even start in family court. We started in Supreme Court. So I'm in Supreme Court to this day. And this judge, I started doing some research on his record, how he ruled, and I did a Freedom of Information request. It came back saying that this judge did not have an oath of office on record with the State Department. Whoa, this is a violation of subsection 10 and 30 of the New York Public Officers Law. So I decided to do some more research. I did an oath of office request for the Chief Justice, which is Rowan Wilson, and the Clerk of Courts, Milton Tingling. Both of their oaths of office, certified oath of office, were sent to me by the State Department. But again, within those requests, I asked again, does Michael L. Katz of the Supreme Court of New York have an oath of office on record? It comes back, he does not have an oath of office. So now we have a very big issue. So I call the State Department as an investigative journalist, not as myself, and I say, hey, this is something that I've discovered through FOIA, and I just wanted some clarity on this. I'm talking to the attorneys at the State Department, and they asked me, sir, are you in law school? And I said, no. And they said, well, you're on to something. And so I put this information on record. I'm making it aware that you are violating, not only are you violating my rights, you're also violating the law. And so there's a jurisdiction issue here, right? So I do that, and then I start to look at the transcripts from my hearings, and I remember my very first hearing. The judge says, "I'm going to reveal my bias." Those are his exact words, and that struck me because at the time I had an attorney, and if you don't know about courts, when you're in court and you're presenting before the courts, you as a plaintiff or defendant cannot speak because the attorney is there to speak on your behalf, because according to corpus juris secundum, you're considered incompetent, right? So now I'm no longer with an attorney. So that means I can speak for myself, and I put on record, you made this statement, which is against the Part 100 rules in the law. You cannot say you have a bias of any matter. It says you cannot say it or manifest it in any way. This is what the law says. So now this judge is pissed off because now I'm holding him to the fire based on the law, not based on my own whatever, but based on the law. So this judge started to come down really hard on me because he's like, who are you to tell me what I am to do? But I thought we have a constitution, and the whole point of it, you're supposed to be abiding by the Constitution. So then I start learning about the supremacy clause, which says that the New York State Constitution does not trump the federal Constitution. So I'm studying, man. I'm like getting myself armed because I'm going in here warring for my child. There's also something called the best interest principle, right? Why would I never not be in the best interest of my child, right? Then I start finding out that, the state is incentivizing the judge to make a father pay child support. So now I don't get a fair and impartial hearing ever because this judge is incentivized. Did you know that a judge gets 66 cents on every dollar that a parent is paying the courts? The judge gets this in his retirement. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
So yes, so now we have incentivized judges that are making decisions, and some don't even have oaths of office on record, which is against the law in the state of Tennessee. So I start, obviously I start joining men's groups and talking to other parents who are going through it. It happens to women too, but most of it are men. I'm starting to find out I'm actually not so unique, right? This is happening on a very systematic, deliberate level. They are taking fathers out of homes and then wondering why children are turning into these really horrific situations. I mean, the statistics on children who grow up without fathers is horrifying, literally. Yeah. I'm going to court crying, fighting for my son. I'm like, I didn't ask for this. I would have never had a child knowing that someone planned this situation against my life. So nevertheless, we have a custody trial. I'm there defending myself against this attorney who's been practicing for 30 plus years. And I'm whooping this woman's behind in court. And this judge waits a whole year for me to make his ruling. And at this point, and then a year later, in 2023, he rules that gives my ex-wife full custody. I have no rights to my son. Not only, I can't even leave New York City with my son. She can travel all over the world. He even allowed her to get a second passport for the child, but I can't get my son a haircut. He told me I couldn't call my son by his middle name. I mean, this guy's like, it's the most bizarre thing. Any person I've spoken to is like, what is going on? I've never seen anything like this. I've spoken to investigators, but this man has it out for me. And so I started, I filed a judicial complaint. It's still being investigated. I filed a complaint with the Inspector General of Bias Matters because, again, I have him on record saying that he is biased. So that means if you have bias about one thing, whether you have it or not, the fact that you had the audacity to say it says that you have other biases, right? So I filed.
I'm sorry, could you clarify, what did he identify as his bias? What was he biased about?
Saying that no parent should be showing their child on social media.
Which is done all the time.
But I was already making the decision. I'm not showing my son. No one has ever seen.
I mean, that's actually interesting because I do follow you on social media, and you do censor your son's face. You show that you had a great day with your son, but you don't depict him. So it's strange to cite that against you when people ordinarily show pictures of their kids all over social media without any restraint whatsoever, and you actually are concealing your son's face
Yeah.
So it's very strange to identify you as somebody doing that when it's actually being done broadly, and most people don't censor their kids in general
Well,
on social media.
again, his identity, his identity is his to reveal, not for me. But to know that I'm walking down the street holding my son's hand or whatever it is that I'm showing, that's my business, because that is my right constitutionally, federally. I have the right. The government can only step in some ways, and that is if I'm an unfit parent. And there is no way you could ever call me that. But what they try to do is try to undermine you and make you look criminal. So I'm gonna tell you what happened to me, Jeremiah, because this just happened, and I haven't talked about this. This is the first time I'm talking about it. Well, I had a concert at Joe's Pub on July 12th, and I talked about it for the first time in the public. But not only that, but my wife became a millionaire between 2019 and 2022. $1.6 million this woman made that I am very much responsible for helping her accumulate. And so I was not working. I haven't worked in a few years. I've been borrowing money and doing whatever I can because it's just been tough, right? I'm like kind of getting back on my feet. Nevertheless, they've forced imputed income on me to pay a certain child support number, right? And so I wasn't able to keep up with the child support. So on June 5th, 2025, after self-representing now 3 years, now I've been in court 4 years. For 3 years, I have been filing, doing all the things right, just trying. I mean, we even had to get a parental coordinator who realized what was happening, but rather than coming and vouching for me, she quit. But she wrote me an email saying, I'm concerned about X, Y, and Z, right? So I put all these things on the record. So this judge on June 5th sent me to Rikers Island.
Oh my God.
I was sent to a criminal jail.
Oh my
prison.
God.
And it gets worse. I got drugged there. They drugged me.
What?
This is a man who's had a stellar life and a stellar career. This man not only sent me, put me in danger, they drugged me when I was there. And I stayed in Rikers Island for 8 days. You know what my sentence?
God.
Jeremiah, my sentence was 6 months.
Oh my God.
6 months because I've been sticking up to this judge. It's sticking up for my rights, not even like this is my rights. He sent me to jail for showing my son with a heart over his face, saying it was contempt. This was the sticker to me. I had police officers coming to my cell asking me, what did you do? Because this is not about child support. The guy, I'm sitting next to murderers. Now, the one thing I can tell you is I was isolated. They had me in a separate cell the entire time I was there. So I was always, they shackled me, Jeremiah, by the ankles.
Oh my God. Oh
By the
my God.
ankles, my brother. This was one of the low. I was suicidal in there. I was beside myself. I could not believe my life had come to that low. But this is what they do. This is how they try to dismantle you when you try to stick up for your rights, when you try to stick up for your children.
God.
So the thing is, this judge doesn't realize who I know and how I'm connected because I've lived a certain kind of life. So he didn't know that I knew Alvin Bragg. He didn't know that I knew certain people. So when I went to court on June 13th, Friday the 13th, how ironic is that? And my mother's there. My mother drives 6 hours. My family drives 6 hours for my release. And my mother's crying in court because she would never, ever expect for her child to be in this predicament. And you know what the judge says to me? I got a lot of calls about you. And I didn't say a word. I didn't say a word. So now I got a federal lawsuit on my hands. So what I'm doing is I got some money to get an attorney to try to help me get to the end of, hopefully a settlement in this situation. Because not only that, but it's just so many details to my situation that are like crazy. Like I've been stalked by my ex-wife. I've been threatened. I've been trackers sewn into my son's belongings, trying to track me. I mean, it's just been the most mind-screwing situation possible. But I'm a warrior. and I'm going to continue to fight for my son and for my rights. And I'm just hoping that I can get to the end of this. But now I have media like yourself. I have TV journalists who are waiting to cover my situation. I just put the pump on the brakes a little bit, because what I recognize is, and I haven't spoken to another journalist, he told me the judge I'm under his thumb. And at any point he could do the same thing to me again. So I have to be very careful, because who knows? And he doesn't have to let me out, right? So I have to be really, really mindful. But I do have, it's interesting, man. Like, even, I run into this young man who I used to mentor, who had a record deal and now works in law, and like literally works for like a very high profile person. And so I'm just basically putting together my case, because I know what I can bring to the federal courts, and I intend to do that. But I'm just gonna hold off a bit. I'm going to do interviews such as this, because it's very important to talk about this. Very, very important. This is happening to fathers all around the nation. And what I meant to tell you, when I back up about the public officers law, this exists across the nation, by the way. In the state of Tennessee, the public officers law is a misdemeanor, and judges who have not done it properly face a misdemeanor because of it. So this is a big deal, because, the Constitution was written for a reason. It's for people to not be able to overstep one's rights, right? And you give too much power and it turns into a situation such as mine. And so I'm being very vocal about it. I will continue to talk about it. And I really appreciate you giving me this platform to share my story, because while it is sad, it is not unique. There are many fathers who are literally, if you look at the suicide rates of fathers who are being taken away from their children, it is alarming. We have a crisis in this country.
My goodness. Well, I'm honored to have you on the program to share all of this with my audience. And I'm so upset to hear what you're describing. I mean, I knew that you had been through a very difficult situation, but oh my goodness, I'm so saddened and so angered at the same time to hear what you're describing.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a huge problem. I think one general theme that we see recurring is the abuse of power.
Yes.
Police officers are abusing their power. Doctors are abusing their power. Judges are abusing their power. And what can we do to stop this? Because the judges are supposed to be there to enforce the law, right? To provide objectivity, to provide justice. And we see, as what you're describing, and I know there's many cases of this, where judges are being flagrantly abusive from their positions. And I can only imagine, I mean, divorce is hard enough.
Yeah.
All these matters of custody and so on, it's hard enough.
Yep.
But then you add a corrupt judge and it becomes torturous. It becomes hell on earth. Instead of a person, managing their affairs and dealing with a difficult situation as well as it can be dealt with, you have a judge who's now creating a hell on earth situation for a gentleman such as yourself. And and I'm sure you could hear, anyone who hears this interview, I'm sure you can tell Jeremiah is a nice guy. He's a classy guy, and I could vouch for that. I've known him over the years, always a gentleman, always a pleasure to bump into you in the neighborhood, catch up for a minute. I mean, why on earth is a judge treating a good man, a man who's a good man by every account, as a hardened criminal, being treated like a mass murderer?
Yep.
And for what? For nothing. You've done nothing to anybody to harm anyone, and the judge can just arbitrarily abuse their power in this way. Very, very frustrating to hear you describe this situation, my brother.
Yeah, it has. I just never imagined in my life that I would experience something like this, because my parents did their best and did a fantastic job to make sure that we didn't turn out a certain kind of way. And the difference is, I didn't grow up with my father. My father didn't come into my life until I was 17. So I escaped all of the things that could have happened.
Mhm.
But I'm unique in that way because many people fall into the traps. I had
Yeah.
music that saved my life, to be quite honest. Music is what saved my life.
Yeah.
Even growing up in a, I didn't grow up in a bad area, but, it was the music that kept me, on the straight and narrow, right? But why would you rob a child, a black boy,
Mhm.
from having the beautiful experiences that a man of the world culture that I have? Why would you rob a child of that? Why would you put a child in a position to possibly be a statistic out of your ego? Because that's what this is right now. This is not about
Right.
a child. This is
And
about,
who does he have to answer to for his horrendous decisions that will affect the life of an innocent boy?
well,
Right? He can flex and assert his power, and who does he have to answer to for these poor judgments on his part?
so what I've learned, through my research and the experience is that the family court, the Supreme Court, they are unique that they actually somehow are able to bypass the Constitution. So you can go
Wow.
in there and you can like literally use case law from New York State and from the federal law, which the law says, and they are almost what's the word? They don't have to follow the law. They literally don't have to follow the law. I can show you case law X, Y, and Z. I have to go to federal court in order to actually, which they call an Article 3 court. I have to go to an Article 3 court for the Constitution to be observed. We don't have rights until you get to a federal court. Do you realize that?
I had no
We do
idea.
not have
Learn something new every day, right?
not have rights in this country until you go to federal court. Otherwise, the Constitution is bypassed. That's
Oh my
fair because
goodness.
they make an oath to uphold the Constitution.
Wow.
And the lawyers, they so one of the things that they use is a term is called the silver bullet. So women a lot of times will say, "Oh, my client, my woman client is in danger, and we want an order of protection." So they tried to do that to me. The judge did say, "Well, where's the proof?" I've never had any. I've never been in a fight in my life, my friend. There's never
Yeah.
been any violence in my home. The police have never been to my home because it never happened. But that's what they'll do. They'll create that scenario because they're trying to criminalize you. So when they criminalize you, now they have even more grounds to take you away from your children. And this is what they do to fathers across the nation. So I ended up going to get an order of protection against my ex because she was stalking me. I went into the family court, and do you know they gave it to me with no proof? I never showed them anything. I just made the claim, and they gave it to me. That's how bad it is. That's how bad
Goodness.
it is.
Yeah, people need to start concerning themselves with this. We need to start speaking out against this. And I don't know what can be done. I mean, this is a deeply defective feature of our society, quite clearly. I mean, this is so wrong. And add this to the list of just really terrible things that are going on right now.
Yeah.
We're actually pretty much out of time here, but is there any way that people can support you? How do people keep up with you in some manner? Can people sign up for your vocal classes, which I know are outstanding? I don't know if you're currently accepting students.
Yes, so there's a couple of ways. I have a website, Jeremiah Abiah, that's JeremiahABih as in boy, IAH as in Henry.com. They can sign up for my mailing list. I would encourage people to actually friend me on Facebook, which is, again, my name, because I share this information about my situation on Facebook a lot. Also on TikTok and also on Instagram, it's my name. I think it's really important. And yes, people can sign up for voice lessons on my website and also through Instagram. I'm working with a host of well-known singers and not so well-known aspiring, and I certainly love to help people, so I want to be of service in that way. So please, and thank you again, Jeremiah, for having me here and allowing me to passionately speak about my situation. I know that this will resonate with other people because I know if someone is not going through it, they have somebody with less than 3 degrees of separation or going through the same thing.
Well, thank you for introducing us to this really important and difficult to discuss topic. And I'm very sad under the circumstances of what you're going through, but I'm glad to help spread the word about what the heck is going on in your case and similar cases all around the country. This really, something has to be done, because this is just, it's torturous to fathers who don't deserve this sort of injustice inflicted upon us. And worst of all, it's harming the children. And how could the people doing all this stuff not realize this is not beneficial to these innocent beings?
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you everyone for tuning into the Bassline. Please spread the word about this program. Please share the links. Go to the Bassline, BASSLINE.podbean.com. And yeah, please, let's all help create a more enlightened society, because there's so many issues that we have to confront. And this is as important as any of them, I would say, because if we don't have families, we have nothing.
That's right.
So thanks again, Jeremiah. Stay strong. Talk to you soon. And I want to get one of those vocal lessons myself very soon.
When you walk with open arms towards the sun, you feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, 'cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you, or anything that you learn from a book or from the news. It's not like that, 'cause it's a thing. It is something that you do. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Dib-on baby did-a-long. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Dib-on baby did-a-long. The highest truth. Nothing could be higher than love, my friend. Love's the deepest truth. Nothing could be deeper than love, my friend. When you stop and you take the time just to think about your life, you'll recall the ones you love and the ones who were always there for you. Better thank those friends better. You better make amends. Go and tell them now, yeah. Tell them what they mean to you. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Dib-on baby did love.